Imagine you have a spiritual teacher or a guru who says, um, your nature is peace, or your nature is joy, or maybe it's a non-duality teacher, and you go to a group and you're sitting there and you're listening to him talk and he's answering questions, and you ask a question. You say, well, this is, and you share what's going on with yourself, whatever it is. And then you say, well, what can you say about that? And the non-duality teacher says, that's just a story. It's just a story, what you're saying. So why would you be going to a non-duality teacher? Like, what is the reason? If you think about it, like, why are you actually going? What is the, like, have you actually thought about what the process is? So you're going to that non-duality teacher, and how in your mind does this process work? So, I mean, I could say that it's, well, I could tell you how I would say almost everybody, probably everyone thinks it works, is that the non-duality teacher, the truth dawned on that non-duality teacher, which is that there is, well, every non-duality teacher has a slightly different story they tell. But so to say that maybe it's just a dream, that the character is just a character in a story, it's just a story. There is only nothing and everything. So there's everything and nothing. There's, that everyone has a different, slightly different way of explaining what they have realized, right? So you go to a non-duality teacher, and the realization has dawned on them that it's just a story, that they're everything and nothing, right? For instance, I'm everything and nothing. And this is just a story. So I'm going to stick with that. So everyone in that room is essentially seeking to have the same realization, to have that truth dawn on them. So you're going there so that it kind of rubs off on you, so that the similar, like, dawning of awareness occurs for you, right? I mean, it's basically what it is. So that somehow there's a shell of thought, maybe, or that you're trapped in thought, or you're trapped in your story. I mean, whatever it is, you have like a kind of an idea of what the problem is for you. Because obviously it's seen as a problem, because you're trying to get somewhere that you're not, or you're trying to undo something that is there and you don't want there, or maybe you don't believe it's actually there and it just needs to fall away, but it doesn't even really need to fall away because it's not actually there. I mean, there's a lot of clever sounding ways of explaining it. But ultimately, the non-duality teacher was on a train, or walking in a park, or sitting in a library, or sitting at home having a cup of coffee, and suddenly this awakening occurred out of the dream of duality and into non-duality. And so you want that to happen for yourself. So what I'm going to do right here is so first of all, this is my experience, and I don't know what I am. So I'm not saying there's a me that's having an experience. That's the best way to explain it. So I experience myself as a me. I don't know what that means necessarily. I experience this me as being in a world. I don't know what that means. Is it just an experience? Is the entire thing experiential and there's no reality to it? Or is it the ultimate reality? Or what? Is it a dream? Is it a simulation? I don't know. But I'm just going to share my experience of people sitting in rooms listening to a non-dual speaker, let's say. So here's how I experience non-duality. Non-duality is, okay, duality, let's say, is, you could say right and wrong, hot and cold, whatever. So it's this or that, one or the other. Well, included in that, which this is where I depart ways from everybody. Everybody. I've never found anyone else who actually has this perspective. And so I'm sharing it because it's, I think it's true. I experience it as being 100% true. I have no doubt in it. And it's completely unique. In other words, I've never found another person who has this perspective. And lastly, I am not trying to be unique. So, I think people often say they want to be unique. They want to stand out in the world. Well, I don't think that's true. I think people say that and don't actually mean that. So, because I have a completely unique experience and it's disjointing from a human perspective. It's bizarre. And it's not something that I consciously chose. Maybe I did, but anyway, so back to what I was saying. So where I part ways with every single non-dual teacher, and I think what I'm saying is 100% true, if no doubt in it whatsoever. Like literally, if you were to take confidence and break it up into a billion points, and each one being a billionth of the whole, or a billionth of a percent of confidence. So how confident am I in what I'm saying? Am I 100 billion or 99% of a billion or 99.9% of a billion? No, I'm a billion out of a billion percent confident. So I'm not 99 out of 100 or 100 out of 100. Well, I am 100 out of 100. But in other words, there's no lack of confidence in what I'm about to tell you. So non-duality for me is there. Every single non-dual teacher that I've ever listened to, in the way that I experience reality, is not actually expressing non-duality, not whatsoever, not even slightly. So if you need to turn this off, that's absolutely fine. I don't care because I'm just sharing. So, and if you find that offensive, I don't care. I'm just sharing. So, and if you think that I'm wrong, well, I could absolutely be wrong. I'm not claiming that I'm right. I'm simply sharing the perspective that I'm having from this, whatever this is, this point of consciousness or this experience of being a me. So non-dual teachers will tell you something like, it's just a story. Like what you're telling me is just a story. So instantly, my response to that is, that's completely dualistic thinking. 100%. It has nothing to do with non-duality. Because if you're sharing something, so you're telling your story of your life, and the non-dual teacher says, well, that's just a story. Well, how could I put this? Someone else could listen to what you're saying and say, well, that's more than a story. That is divine. That's your life. Or that's not a story. In other words, the non-dual teacher is telling you what you said, what it is. So in other words, that's dualistic, because to say it's a story is the opposite side of saying it's not a story. And that's dualism. So the only way, and no matter what it is, if your teacher says your nature is peace, well, the other side of that statement is your nature is conflict. If your teacher says your nature is joy, then the other side of that statement is your nature is agony. So all of those statements, as I experience them, are 100% dualistic. 100%. So when you go and you sit in a room, and this person who's had this realization tells you that what you're saying is just a story, and you are everything and nothing. Well, first of all, he's telling you what you just said, what it is. So he knows. He's telling you what it is, or she's telling you what it is. What you're saying is a story. So that is a statement out of knowledge. A statement out of knowledge is dualistic, because all knowledge is dualistic. All knowledge is dualistic. Because you either know this is right or know this is wrong. You know that that's a story, or you know that it's not. You know that your nature is peace, or you know that your nature is conflict. And one person may tell you that your nature is peace, and another person may tell you that your nature is conflict. And each one may make that statement with total clarity. And then which are you to believe? The one that sounds better, maybe? Oh, my nature is peace, so I'm going to go with that because that sounds good. So that's not non-duality. Not at all. To say your nature is peace is to say the same thing as my car gets 30 miles to the gallon. You're just making a statement about something in a very factual, matter-of-fact kind of way. This is just how this is. And so you sit in the room with the non-dual teacher, and they seem to have knowledge, right? That it's just a story, and your nature is that you're everything and nothing, or whatever it is. I haven't listened to non-dual stuff for several years, actually. I used to listen to it all the time because I was trying to find someone who, well, I stumbled on non-duality, and they spoke in a way that somewhat resonated with my experience. I was trying to find another human being who was having a similar experience to mine. I still haven't found it, but at all, nowhere, not even once. So not trying to make that happen. That's just a fact as far as I can tell. It's open to change at any moment. But as of yet, I have no information to contradict that statement. So true non-duality, as I experience it, because let's say, go back to your nature is peace. It's no different than saying that the Bible is true. And then the other side of that would be the Quran is true. And then you amass a billion people on each side with each belief, and then they are essentially in a contest for supremacy, and each believes that they are right and the other is wrong. So if you have any sort of definitive statement about anything, it's dualistic. How could it not be? So what would be non-dual? Real non-dual. As I experience it, and again, I don't know what I am, I can just say that this appears to be an experience. As I experience it, non-duality is not knowing this particular thing or that particular thing. So not knowing that your life is just a story, or that you are everything and nothing. It's actually, so there is no, non-duality isn't a particular knowing, which if you think about it, there's 7 billion, however many people, each person has a unique knowing, and they think it's right. Even though people are all in disagreement about what the truth is, so everyone thinks they know what the truth is, and nobody agrees with them except maybe people in their church to a certain degree. So non-duality is your true nature. What is it? It's so easy. And the thing is that it's the one thing that all human beings run from. And even people sitting in rooms listening to non-tool speakers, they run from their own nature. I see it in every single human being. I've never not seen it in a human being, except for in myself, whatever I am. I don't know what I am, but I don't find that characteristic in myself. Well, maybe glimmers of it here and there. It does come up, but generally speaking, not at all. I have this very unique and bizarre experience, which, like I said, in a sense, I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, because imagine being the only person in a whole entire world that has a certain experience. It's odd, but it's more curious than anything. So true non-duality is not knowing anything. Not knowing anything. So when you tell your story to the non-dual teacher, a true non-dual teacher would say, okay, well, you've just told me your story, and I don't know, because I am not a possessor of knowledge. I don't actually know what I am. I am here. I'm experiencing this reality. Apparently, I have the experience of being here. And I don't know what here is. I don't know what life is. I don't know what the meaning of life is. But I am experiencing it, apparently. And it's interesting and enjoyable. And I don't have any fixed positions. I just don't. I can't tell you that what you just told me is just a story and that you're everything and nothing. I can tell you what my experience is. So I can just share my experience. I'm not going to tell you what the truth is, so that I have this truth that is somehow the truth about reality. And the truth about you and your place in reality, which is when you go to a non-dual teacher, they're telling you the truth about reality and the truth about your place in reality, which is to say, knowledge. They know things. So a non-dual teacher, as I see it, as I experience it, an actual non-dual teacher, if would say, well, here's my experience. If someone shared their story, my experience is that you've just shared this with me. You're a person in the world that is that's an aspect of who you are. But that is, and this is just my experience, and because it's my experience of myself, and it's my experience of everyone. And in fact, my experience is, in a sense, that in a way that I cannot understand through like with my rational mind, so through knowing, that in a way, there is no you and I, there's us. And what we are is, so what you just shared is a story about like this character that's moving in the world. And my experience of that is that, well, I have the same story of a character moving in the world. So that story exists. I go here, I go there, I eat lunch, I get married, I have kids, I have a job, I start young and I grow old and I die. And you have a story. It's different, but it's kind of similar in a way. So when you share your story, I say, well, that's a character in the world moving, just like me, the character that I experience myself to be in this world. And at the same time, I experience myself and you as something other than that. Something that, as I said, it's not you and I, it's us. It's changeless. So the character changes, but what we are doesn't change. It's still. So the character moves in the world. Your character and my character both move. but what we are is still. And in that stillness, there is an infinite depth of peace. But is it being peaceful? Does it mean that the character? No, I don't think characters aren't necessarily peaceful. All kinds of things happen that disrupt that peace. But I'm talking about the innermost essence of us. It is this changeless stillness, and obviously something that doesn't change and is still is going to be peaceful. But if I were to say, are there any other characteristics to that I can't find any characteristics to it, but it's somehow amazing, and somehow it's somehow magic. It's somehow I'm trying to think of this word. Divine. I can't think of the word. I always forget this word. Okay, we'll look it up. So, metaphysical. Didn't have to look it up. Thought of the word divine. So it's somehow metaphysical. It's still and it's empty. Also, I don't find anything within it, but it's teeming with potential. You and I, us, we are teeming with potential. And it seems as though somehow everything that is somehow comes to be within us, which doesn't make any sense. It's just a feeling. So, but notice I didn't tell you that what you just told me is a story. What I told you is that my experience. So I didn't push my experience onto you as though it is truth. I said, this is my experience. My experience is that I'm two things and you're two things. So I experience that all people are exactly the same as what I'm sharing right now. That you're a character in a story, and each character is different and has different characteristics and attributes. And then you are what we are, which is that sort of still, sort of infinite, sort of quiet, but teeming with potential space. So the question is, well, what is this? How does this help you? Does this help you? Okay, I'm going to tell you this. I've said this in another video that I just made yesterday. I've never had the potential to hold belief systems. And so, which is completely unique. I find nobody else in the entire world that has no belief systems. I have no belief systems that I know of. I'm not saying I don't. I don't experience myself to have belief systems. So I may. I don't know. But I don't experience myself to. And whereas everybody else, they wear their belief systems. I mean, every single human being I've ever met, they wear their belief systems on their shoulder. It's obvious. Even non-dual people. My life is just a story, everything and nothing, or Course in Miracles people, what was one of the things? To defend is to attack. So I remember I read all of the Course in Miracles, actually. And again, these are all just statements of truth. And so here's what I recommend. So my experience is that the still empty, sort of magical, metaphysical, changeless emptiness, but it's not empty like a human being thinks of empty. Because the character, 100% of the time when it hears empty, will shrivel away from this concept in fear. Because empty is death. Empty is nothing. Empty is end. Empty is lack. So it's not empty like that. It's empty and it's full. But I'm not telling you that you are empty and full. So I'm not saying that you are everything and nothing. What I'm saying is I experience myself to be that, and I experience you to be that because I experience every human being to be that. I just do. I don't know if it's true. So what would I recommend if you wanted to? So if someone wanted to take this to heart and actually try to actually find this within themselves, it's actually really simple, I would say. So I look at the base, kind of my baseline where I started out with, which was that I'm incapable of having belief systems. Totally. Always have been. So try this. And I don't know if this would actually even work, but this seems like it could. Because the, let's say, enlightenment is infinitely light. So to be enlightened is to be infinitely light. And I've said this before, like a helium balloon that floats up infinitely forever. So it's light, as in not heavy. So to be enlightened is to be infinitely light. And the opposite of being enlightened is to be infinitely heavy, which means that you are full of a lot of stuff and weighted down. So it's not a balloon that's floating, but a rock anchored to the ground. And it is my contention, and again, I'm not saying this is true, I'm just saying that this is my experience, that the heaviest possession you can hold on to is knowledge, what you know. So the more you know, the less enlightened you are, because you're full of what you know, as opposed to being empty and light. So infinitely light means infinitely empty. So in other words, an infinitely empty is exactly how I would, one of the ways I would explain what our true nature is. It's infinitely empty, but not in a way that you can understand with your thinking mind. Because that infinite emptiness is also teeming with potential. It kind of is everything and nothing and all of those things. But again, I'm not telling you that that's the truth. I'm telling you that that is my experience. So, think about what characters do. So, what do characters do in the story? The heaviest characters in the story, in the world, have the most knowledge. They're the most weighted down, right? If you think about this, it makes sense. People who claim to know everything, about everyone. Um, I have family that they're in psychotherapy and counseling and dealing with people with trying to personality disorder. Okay, I'm blanking again. Can't remember. Okay, so anyway, the people who are, I've seen this so many times, and I've talked to my family members about it, and have family members that are borderline. That's what I was trying to think of. Yes, thought of it again. So borderline personalities cling to this concept that they know everything about everything, and they push anything that anyone else has to say, they push it away because they understand everything. They understand everything about you and about this person and that person and this whole group of people, and they don't want to hear anything because they've got it all figured out. In other words, that is the heaviest you can be. So clinging to the most amount of what you would experience as knowledge. So that the person that is a borderline experiences what they're experiencing, that they know all of this stuff, they know that it's true. So that would be the opposite of enlightenment. And again, I'm not telling you that this is true. I'm telling you this is my experience of how things work. And I've never heard a non-dual teacher talk about this. So the opposite of enlightenment would be being completely weighed down by the heaviest thing there is, which is what you think you know. So in other words, enlightenment would be knowing the least, or clinging on to and holding to the least amount of content of what you believe that you know to be true. So if you know that your life is just a story, then that's a little piece of knowledge. So that's going to weight you down away from being enlightened or not being weighted down by what you possess, knowledge being the heaviest thing you can possess. So if you say your nature is peace, that weights you down. If your nature is joy, it weights you down. But there's a very simple thing you can do. Just ask yourself what your nature is. Ask yourself, what is my nature? And then when you get an answer back, then you say, okay, I asked myself what my nature is, and the answer I got is, let's say it's peace. Then I asked myself what my nature is, and I looked within, trying to direct my focus within, and the answer I got was peace. And I got the feeling of peace. So then I wouldn't say my nature is peace, because there I'm turning it into something I know. And knowledge is something that you possess, and it's heavy and it weighs you down. You would say, I experience myself to be peace at my essential level, that my nature is peace. That's what I experience myself as. But I'm not going to say it in an authoritative way that my nature is peace, or that my life that I'm sharing is just a story. It's just a story. No, it feels like it's just a story. So notice there's no rigidity in it. It's light. And so now I'll come back to what I keep beating around the bush to get to, is that a practice that I would say to, and this is obvious if you think about this, a practice to move towards enlightenment is to, and you can say this to yourself all day long about anything. It doesn't need to be broadcast outwardly, but you want to retrain your thinking. So no matter what comes up, so do you like pizza? So you can say to somebody, yes, I like pizza. But do I know what that means? I don't really know what that means. And you could say anything. Do you like your job? Are you happy? Are you making progress on the spiritual path? Are you, whatever it is, you can answer, yes, I'm making progress. And then after you answer the question, so normally you would stop there and say, yes, I'm making progress. So then, boom, you have a fact. This is a piece of knowledge you own. I am making progress on my spiritual path. So feel free to say that outwardly, but then inwardly, whenever you make a definitive statement, like, yes, I'm making progress on my spiritual path, then ask yourself inside, well, do I know that? So I guess this is like Katie, I can't remember her name, but I did listen to some of her stuff too. But do I even know what that means? Well, I don't actually know what that means. So do I actually know anything absolutely for sure? I actually don't. So, because, and maybe it's impossible to do this for someone who believes things and believes that they know things like you do. And I'm sure you do, because every human being I've ever met does. But my experiences, and so another thing you can do is you can all throughout the day is just say that although I feel like I know things about myself and the world and all these little facts, do I know like what this actual experience is of life, and what I actually am, and what the world actually is. And for me, the answer to those types of questions is always, well, no, I don't know. Of course I don't know. I don't know. I just don't. I don't know what the world actually is. Is it a dream I'm having? Is it a simulation? Is it exactly as Big Bang cosmologists say it is? And am I just matter and making all this up? I mean, I don't know. I actually don't know. So I can know things subjectively in the world about the world that I'm walking right now, or sitting right now, or eating, or at a non-dual meeting. But the what is the space, or where is all this taking place, and what is the thing that this me that's experiencing it? And ultimately, those questions you can't answer. I mean, you can claim to answer them. I feel like people do claim to answer them and say, "Oh well, I was." They have the Christian story, or the materialistic story, the atheistic story, the Islamic story. They can answer those big, deep questions, but can they really? I don't think anybody can actually answer those questions. I think everybody's making that up in order to feel secure. But what that is that security is weight that's anchoring you down, so you feel anchored. Because the idea of not owning any knowledge is completely out of control. It's you lose all of your control over your experience of reality, and that's been my experience my whole entire life. So I would say that if you want to just tell yourself all throughout the day, quietly to yourself, that I don't actually know that that's true. So whatever you say, I don't actually know that that's true. I know maybe that subjectively I'm having that experience in the world, whatever it is. I'm thinking this thing, I'm definitely, but ultimately, am I? I don't really know. I'm feeling this thing, but ultimately, am I? I don't really know. I can't say with absolute certainty that what's going on is anything more than an experience. And even the experience of being a me is anything more than an experience. So, but I will tell you right now that you will every single human being will run away from this, because every single human being does. People collect knowledge. People in non-duality collect knowledge. People in the military collect knowledge. People in politics collect knowledge. Everybody does exactly the same thing. So, as I said, my experience is that you and I are us. And what we are is, on the one hand, characters in this reality, whatever that is. Notice, I always say whatever that is, because I don't really know. I don't actually know. So that's the difference between you and I, because you know what this is. And your non-dual teacher has told you the truth about your nature, about the true nature of the world, the true nature of your being. So the best I can say about the nature of your being is well, I would just go back to the nature of my being, and I don't know if there is a being per se, other that I am experiencing being. So I am experiencing being here. But there is no ownership in my experience whatsoever. And yet, every single human being I have ever met, listened to, non-dual teachers, students, people, Advaita, Indian teachers that I studied for all day, all take ownership of what they know. Now, how can you own knowledge, which I would contend through my experience is the actual heaviest thing you could possibly own, and actually at the same time be moving towards enlightenment? It's not possible. So generally what people are doing in even in non-duality, I keep coming back to that, is they're actually securing knowledge and securing the heaviness of self, and doing exactly the opposite of what they think they're doing. So just admit that you don't know anything. That's it. All day long, every day. Do it for a year. Just quietly to yourself. I don't really know anything, do I? You could do it that simple. And just keep telling yourself that I don't really know anything. I don't know what life is. I don't know what this experience is. I don't know what this self is. I don't really know anything. And then maybe then you would not own belief systems, because it would dawn on you that everything that you thought you knew was just a belief system. And then you're open and empty. And you're not pushing what you believe out and extending it out all over the world. And you're not participating in this kind of seemingly endless struggle for superiority of belief systems, which happens with individuals all the way up to countries, religions. What if you just say, I don't know? But it's the hardest thing for people to do. In fact, in my life, I've found that for people, this is impossible. 100% impossible. I've never seen not a single person that can do this. And the funny thing is it's my natural state. And actually, as I said, when I look at you, to me, it's obvious it's your natural state. No matter who it is, no matter who I see, no matter who I encounter, I always see that it's their natural state. The natural state of not knowing and just being here, and not knowing exactly why or how, but just being here. And that every single person I've ever encountered does everything they can to push away that insecure sensation of not knowing. And they collect knowledge, even people in non-duality, spiritual seekers. So anyway, that's it. I'm rambling on. But it's interesting, I think, because I have a unique experience in the entire world, which is very strange, I must say. It is bizarre. I've never met anyone else who has the experience that I have. And really, it just comes down to is that I don't possess any knowing. That's really the difference. But as I said in another video, actually the first one that I made, is that as I see it, as I experience reality, no one else possesses knowing either. They simply tell themselves they do. You tell yourself that you do. Everyone tells themselves that they possess knowing, that they know things for sure. Absolutely. This is fact. This is truth. And that is exhausting. It's rigid. It's tight. It's controlling. It sets up endless conflict with everyone else who actually believes that they know exactly as strongly as you believe you know, but what they know is different than what you know. And so knowing is in perpetual conflict with knowing from two different perspectives. So anyway, that's it. I just wanted to share that. And non-duality is not knowing anything, which is your actual true state. Not knowing that your nature is peace, not knowing that you're everything and nothing, but just simply not knowing. And then imagine if what would you call it? It's like a web, a tightly strung web of knowing. What if one by one those threads are undone by you just saying, I don't know? And then instead of ending up as a human being who doesn't know anything, which some stupid fool, right, is what people would think, what if the web of knowing that is tightly strung and rigid and an authority on what it knows is slowly but surely, one by one, the threads are loosened. And that net that is strung across underneath you, that is holding you in place, gives way and you fall into not knowing. But what you fall into is not the not knowing of human beings, of characters, of being a fool, but you fall into your true nature. into the not knowing that is the empty, still space, which is the potential and the manifestation of all things and nothing at the same time. But again, this is just my experience I'm sharing. I'm not telling you this is the truth. But I experience this as truth. Absolutely. So let go of your knowing and see what happens. See if you actually fall back into yourself, back into the depth of stillness and peace and emptiness that we are.